Welcome to Lighten Up, a show about bringing more love, light, and joy into your life, and archived on the Lighten Up program page. Please join us in the chat room by clicking on the chat room icon located on the left-hand side of our menu bar. Now the host of Lighten Up, Isabel Merians.
Welcome to Lighten Up with Isabel, your new good news show. Today I have lots of good news to share, and one of the best bits of good news is that you're watching this program, which means that you're open and thinking about ways of bringing more love, light, and joy into your own life. Today we have a very special guest, which is also good news, my friend and the Honorable Mayor of Alpine, New Jersey, Paul Tomasko.
Thank you.
Welcome, Paul, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Isabel.
It's my great pleasure. Paul has been the mayor of Alpine for 17 years. He has done an absolutely fabulous job and is so loved and respected in the community that actually, I think the last couple of terms he's run unopposed. Is that correct, Paul?
That is correct.
Well, tell us a little bit about how you got into the job you're doing now. I know you were on the council before, is that correct?
That is. It's actually an interesting odyssey, if I dare say so myself. Out of Columbia Graduate School of Business, 11 job offers.
Nice.
I went to work in the hospital supply field, which is very service-oriented, for a major distributor of hospital supplies. And I did that for 20 years successfully. And so far as the critical factor for success in that business was making sure that the customer had the supplies they needed when they needed them, so that they wouldn't have to carry excess inventory or, even worse, run out. And after doing that for 20 years, I was fortunate to be offered, and in fact I accepted a buyout, basically an early retirement package.
Well, you were very young at that time.
That I was. I was in my early or mid-40s, I think.
Wow.
I think it's fair to say.
That is very young.
And instead of sitting back at that point and looking for something drastically different, I decided to become an independent manufacturer's rep in the healthcare field, which meant that I had a much bigger territory, but with far fewer product lines. Instead of being able to do what I did the first 20 years, of supply almost everything in the way of medical and surgical equipment that a hospital or medical center might need, I had specific lines. But again, the driving consideration there was responsiveness. And I did that for another 12 years. And in keeping with that sort of service-oriented profession, stepping from that into serving my community was not a big leap.
Well, I think that's wonderful, and I know what extraordinary service that you have given the community. And of course, I know that you're not paid, and your work is ongoing and constant. I have never known before what a mayor actually does. And meeting you and chatting with you, I'm beginning to see the wide range and the variety of responsibilities that you have. And of course, Alpine is a small enough community that you seem to do just about everything. Could you just speak a little bit, address the variety of things that you're called upon to do?
It really does encompass a lot, at least that's the way it is in our town. We do not happen to have an administrator. So I do more work than some of my cohorts or colleagues doing the same in other towns. And basically the formal duties are fairly straightforward. You run meetings, make appointments, and also break a tie in the event that there is one by casting a vote. But in essence, the job of mayor is almost the full range of responsibilities. The putting together of agendas for our monthly meetings, the keeping in touch with the various borough employees every day. Even though I do not wish to have and do not have an office in our borough hall, I am there at least once. And I'm also in touch with various people that work for our borough, whether full-time employees or part-timers or volunteers or professionals, about a range of matters. And I think my experience is not all that unusual, except that I am probably more hands-on than many of my peers in other towns around us.
Well, we're certainly very fortunate to have you. And I remember the other day you were concerned because the chemicals in the community pool were not the right chemicals. I mean, something as crazy as that. You know, I thought, oh my God, he's got to worry about that too.
Isabel, I got a call from our borough's health officer Thursday morning. I believe that was the day that we had a luncheon appointment. And he said, the tests that we've just received will not enable us to open the town swim club this weekend unless there are some measures taken. So, and furthermore, he indicated that the lead volunteer for our swim club was not responding to voice messages.
Oh,
in
wow.
fact, that voicemail box was full. So I had to find a way to reach out to the necessary individuals to address that need.
And today you said it was done. It's okay now.
We opened.
That's good news.
That was an issue that was successfully addressed. But it is such that as mayor you take a lot of calls. In fact,
I think you need the wisdom of a Solomon and the patience of a saint. And that's my personal opinion about this job.
Well, those things definitely help.
But I think I really think that, One thing I would like to ask you, Paul, before, I'm going to give a little bit more good news first. The last time on the last program, I shared with the audience the fact that since 2000 to this year, 2015, the United Nations reported that over 700 million people had been lifted out of dire poverty. Now that is a staggering thought and so wonderful and so extraordinary. But I thought today I might share some other good news which is on a smaller level that people might be able to relate to a little bit more. One thing, I read a story about a taxi driver who stopped and picked up a mother duck and her baby ducklings put them in the back seat of his cab and moved them to safety. So that's a sweet story.
It surely is. It surely is.
You know, these little things, these simple acts of kindness. I recently read excerpts from a speech by Jody Williams, who is a Nobel Prize winner. And she was given a Nobel Prize for her work in trying to rid the world of landmines and was recognized for that work. And she said that if everybody would simply find a cause that they truly believed in and volunteer only 2 hours a month, that it would make such an absolutely staggering difference. And of course that's true. And the other thing is that when you do a kindness for someone else, you certainly make yourself happier. You know, there's no doubt about that. And having a positive outlook. And certainly you help so many people that I would assume that it makes you very happy.
There are those times.
Okay.
And the beauty of this, the privilege that I've been given to serve our town, is that you have an opportunity to make a difference in the lives of others, and clearly it goes both ways.
Yes.
You do the best you can, and it's very important that this I think is worth taking note of, that even at this level of service in government, it makes a huge difference, in my opinion, what kind of people you have doing this for your town.
Absolutely.
If you get the right people in there for the right reasons, which is to say, to give,
Right.
rather than whatever else, then things really can gel and everyone can benefit. And just the opposite is also possible.
Absolutely.
We have all seen or read about both,
Absolutely.
the good and the bad taking place.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, since you've been mayor for 17 years, I know there have been huge changes in Alpine, certainly since I moved in. And would you like to share a little bit of that, the changes that you've seen?
With regard to our town, Isabel, when I moved in, which is probably soon, or within a couple of years of the time you did, we were quite more rural, if not almost rustic, than we are now. The town has grown.
Yes. Oh, yes. Now, don't they call Alpine Tree City?
We are certified Tree City USA and have been so for more than a dozen years. And we are doing our best to maintain and preserve such very important aspects of our town as the trees. And also we've taken steps to acquire and preserve various tracks. We are very fortunate in Alpine to have almost half of the land within our town's border as part of the Palisades Interstate Park Commission or the Boy Scouts and such not developable. So we have extraordinarily low density considering the size of our land mass.
Which is wonderful,
And,
which is really wonderful.
And we
So I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were saying that we were pretty rustic in the good old days.
We are less so now. The Alpine has gotten more attention as time's gone by, not, of course, due to that is to say, myself or the team I work with in our government seeking it, but rather because of the real estate business promoting our town as a wonderful place to buy a home and live. And I find that it's, well, at least it's my opinion that most of the people that I am in contact with value their privacy and would prefer that our town not be as much out there. But thanks to my esteem for you and my friendship with you, nonetheless, I am here on camera in front of you and making an exception in your case, Isabel.
I do appreciate it. And I do know that so many movie stars and rock musicians have been attracted to Alpine and of course bring a great deal of publicity as a result of that. And I know you don't love publicity, so.
and many of them do not either. In fact, I tell people that if you are going to visit our town in hopes of running into them, you're wasting your time.
Because most are very.
They value their privacy.
Yes. Well, I mean, Alpine is one town where you do not get mail delivery, which is very interesting. And for many years, we did not have numbers on the outside of our houses, because people wanted their privacy and did not want other people to know where they lived.
Well, or didn't see the need for it. And in fact, going to the post office as often a week as one chooses to do is a nice way of seeing your neighbors and interacting with them more so than if the mail were delivered to your house in the normal fashion.
Absolutely.
So it's something that is beneficial for that reason.
Well, I wanted to also ask you, Paul, if you, since you've been so very successful in Alpine, have ever considered running for higher office or another office within the party?
Let me just fill in a little bit more of my history of community service, Isabel.
Absolutely.
Starting with the Environmental Commission for a 3-year term, and then 2 terms on the council, for each of which was 3 years, and then 2 years on the planning board. And as you've already mentioned, this is my 17th year as mayor. And what we've done is we've tried to bring the town together and not emphasize any differences or difficulties, but rather try to avoid them. And basically, what I'm getting at is we are doing our best to minimize the politics in our town and bring people together. So,
which is wonderful.
And the challenge of higher office is that it becomes far more political. One step above what I do is a drastic difference, not only in terms of the political content of seeking that kind of office, but also in terms of the time commitments. Many of the people I see doing that are out almost every night, and the fundraising. But the other aspect of the answer that I want to give you to the question that you were so kind as to ask is that I like our town, and that's why I'm serving it, and I'm happy to be able to be privileged to continue to give it my best effort. And I really have, for those reasons, no particular interest. And if I had interest in that, you can be sure that by now, most likely, I would have made some sort of effort in that direction.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really wonderful that you give of your time and your service so lovingly and kindly and effectively. And so I must assume that you had wonderful parents who gave you this inner desire to help other people, which is a beautiful quality. I mean, if I may ask that question.
They did their utmost. They actually made significant sacrifices for the sake of my brother and me. And to this day, I am eternally grateful. I would be happy to have had the chance to be a parent myself, and would have taken their lead and embraced it. But it wasn't meant to be for me. So.
Well, sometimes the right girl just doesn't come along at the right time, let's face it.
I think as time goes by, Isabel, you see things differently. And initially, one of the goals that I set for myself was freedom from financial pressure. And I worked hard, and I really applied myself to that goal, and it was my good fortune to realize it fairly early on, which enabled me to parlay the service orientation that I had in the work I did into community service. And I really do feel that what Teddy Roosevelt said more than 100 years ago is something that bears the mention and worthwhile keeping in mind, and that is that the true test of our worth is the service that we render. The people set their sights on various things. We're in a very materialistic time, and people live quite well. But I think that the real challenge is to maintain some perspective and realize that that fulfillment is, to a considerable degree, not just making a difference in your own life, but making a difference in the lives of others, and, very importantly, acknowledging the difference others have made in your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's very well said, Paul. And certainly that's, for myself, that is a guiding principle in my own life. So having had the opportunity to do this show and being able to bring some light and some positive energy into this program certainly makes me feel very happy. And, I think that as you say, the way you live your life and being able to be helpful to others is a major, absolutely major consideration.
I think there needs to be some commitment, some concern, some attention given on a regular basis to doing more than thinking very narrow.
Yes.
And community service is an excellent avenue for that.
Absolutely.
I recommend it strongly. I really do feel that not only do you get to understand how the public sector functions, which I, until I started doing this, had no idea of. In fact, I had never even had any need to engage the services of an attorney, other than maybe for the purchase of a house, until I started to occupy an elected office in Alpine. And you see also, as I said, how great a difference having the right people in these offices is capable of making, and also you get to meet your neighbors.
Well,
I don't know that I would
anybody.
have known you or Sid, or if I did, anywhere near as well as I now am fortunate to do,
Okay.
but for the fact that I'm giving my time to my town. And beyond you, there are a lot of others about which the same can be said. But also, we go out of our way to bring in people that have this orientation, have this interest, and we go out of our way to thank them. Rather than taking credit, I and the team that I work with do our best to give credit.
Which is very generous.
Whether it be to our volunteers, and we have, as you know, in our town, a Volunteer of the Year award. But we also recognize and give credit to our employees, and we are very happy to remember and recognize veterans,
Yes.
and especially those on Memorial Day that have given their lives in the service of our town.
I think it's wonderful. Well, I would just like to, for the audience who might not know this, my late husband, Sidney, worked on the council with Paul, which is how I was fortunate enough to get to know him. And I think it was for 7 years. Is that
I would say more like 12 years,
Was it
Isabel,
that
but
long?
but
I'm
you
really
may.
not sure.
I'm sure it was more than 7.
Yeah, and he enjoyed that time so much.
And he contributed substantially, and we so much appreciated his time and your support as well.
Well, that's very kind.
Sid was very generous and forthcoming, and I consider it a privilege to have had the chance to work with him in the service of our town.
Well, that's very kind. Now, I'm going to give a little bit more good news today. I'm full of good news. I found out that American Pharoah's jockey, American Pharoah, of course, won the Triple Crown, which was for the first time in 37 years. And his jockey decided that he is giving his winnings from the Belmont to charity, which I thought was lovely. So you see kindness being, there's so much bad news in the world, but you see these small acts of kindness, and they're so wonderful. And I also read a story recently about a young couple who went into a diner, and they were having conversation, and unfortunately they had recently lost a baby. And the waitress obviously overheard their conversation. And so when it was time to pay the bill, they presented the bill, and it said, your meal has already been taken care of. And the waitress didn't want them to know, but it was she that actually had paid their bill. So you hear about these random acts of kindness, which is such good news, and it reinforces our belief in human kindness. And, the big things, the huge things on an international level, very often people have they say, oh, isn't that nice? But they don't really get their heads around it. So when I hear good news, I heard recently of a homeless man who had been left a bag full of money as part of an inheritance. And of course he was living on the street. And the Good Samaritan found the bag and didn't rest until they traced him. So, you hear these kind of stories, and they're so heartwarming, and you think, isn't this wonderful? So I always like to share that with my audience.
Very good of you, and I'm sure that your audience gets a lift out of it just as I have.
Well, that's very kind. Well, let me ask this, Paul. How many more years do you have as mayor for this term?
This is the first of my 5th 4-year term, so I
Wow.
have another 3.5 years of service as mayor.
And do you have any plans of how you would like to bring someone else along, or would you run again, or do you feel that you've done your duty, or where are you in the equation?
It's too soon to say for sure, obviously. I have continually been looking for people willing to step up and do more, and I have in fact offered the people who I've thought would have been good mayors in Alpine the opportunity, and I would have been more than happy to step aside a few times for a few of them.
Really? But it's a big commitment, I mean, for someone to take it on.
And what we find, Isabel, is that the people that are retired have the time and flexibility of schedule to give more
time for breakfast.
themselves to.
Well, I think we can manage that.
How long have I got?
Your flight leaves in an hour and 10 minutes. As a matter of fact, I've reserved a table for you in the flight room.
Fine, thanks.
It's been about 7 or 8 months since you were here last, wasn't it?
Well, let's see, last June? Yeah, about 8 months.
So you really need someone who's retired as well as willing to be of service.
And someone who has some experience in the public sector, and preferably in the way the town is run, and in the town itself as a resident for as many years as possible.
Right.
We are able to get to know a lot of people, and a lot of the decisions that voters make, thanks to the size of our town, are based on personal impressions. It's really retail rather than wholesale politicking, if it gets to politics.
Well, let me ask this, is most of your pool the people who are on the council? I mean, are those the most likely people that you would choose?
Definitely the most likely.
Yeah.
And the decision may or may not be mine or all mine. It's we have a committee, and we try to make decisions collectively. It's we think that the town is in very good hands and very good shape, and it's our goal to keep it that way. And if there were somebody that came along that expressed the interest and had the potential, I would be happy to consider that person very favorably.
Well, let me ask this, knowing how hard you work, I remember once I asked you about your day, and you started going through at 8 o'clock, there was a meeting of mayors in Paramus, and you went through this whole list of things, which sounded totally exhausting to me. So I have to ask you, what is the most fun part of the job?
It's interesting, and it brings up, your question brings up two things. And I think I may have given you sort of a preview of a superficial answer to that question, and that is weddings.
Weddings.
They're fast, they're easy, and they're joyous, typically.
Of course.
But
do you perform many a year? I mean,
I would say between a half dozen and a dozen a year.
wow.
The weddings are nice, but
Now, are these usually held at the church? Are they in the homes?
Very rarely at a church. They are either in Borough Hall or in some other public venue or in a home. But that is a very superficial answer. The best part of the job, I think, is really the satisfaction that comes from seeing the town well run. And doing well in general, and being able to give back and give credit, and we take a certain amount of satisfaction from that.
Of course.
We feel that the zoning has been maintained, that our tax rate has been stable, and in fact is the lowest of all 70 towns in Bergen County.
Which is remarkable.
And we also are pleased with the fact that the town is more together, less politically divided than used to be the case before I became mayor, when elections were very difficult and hard fought contests.
Right.
And
Well, I think I told you, Paul, that when we first moved in, the first time I went to vote, there were no two parties to choose from. Do you remember me telling you that?
Yes.
And I said to one of the poll takers, I said, wait a minute, I am in America. I thought this was a two-party system. And they said to me, if you know someone that you want to vote for, write them in.
That is always possible. But the fact of the matter is, Isabel, that at the local level, the party politics are not as necessary or integral as I said earlier, that at the next rung they become. And the divisiveness may or may not be a good thing. In fact, the problem with hard-fought political contests is that it's liable to be a disincentive for the best people to want to put themselves into that and serve their community as volunteers. If somebody has to run the gamut, or even the risk of being trashed in a hard-fought political campaign, you're much less likely to see them willing to step up, and vice versa.
Sure.
So we feel as though we have higher quality volunteers now than we've had, and that is part of the reason for it. And we do our best to minimize the politics, and that means the small differences that the parties try to make big of in the interest of realizing their political ambitions. And we have people from both parties involved in our government. They may all nominally wear the same party label, but you can be sure that on the state or national level, they vote differently from one another.
I'm sure. Well, I must say it is Alpine and my great pleasure to have you as our mayor, and I thank you so very much for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure, and I thank you for the time.
Well, thank you so much, Isabel. It's
Wonderful.
my pleasure.
Until next time, remember to live a more joyous life. Lighten up.